What was the purpose, once again, Matt, of doing three-quarter feather?
There's a couple. One of them is to ensure that you are starting to actually implement your ability to control the angle of the oar rather than relying on the sleeve. So if we use, so we're talking about this opening up of the fingers. I think we talked about 2 weekends ago, using the thumb and the fingers to kind of wedge the handle in our fingers rather than just letting it slip into our palm. It's all a very nice practice, but we need to find a way to actually see if we can do that. And so not relying on the sleeve to kind of either put the blade feathered or squared is a fairly effective way to kind of go about this. Otherwise, we have no way of keeping us honest if we're actually doing it. So there's that. There's also the piece that is, as we're hopefully, if we've already mastered finding lateral connection, as we're coming out and up to the catch, we would like to be able to find a way to eventually practice getting our blades off the water. This is like a goal for most of us to have somewhere way off in the distance. It's like, good rowers or scullers somehow have their blades off the water. I want to be that person. How do I do that? So if we take the blades and we have been keeping them relatively close to the water, especially here where it's flat, and then we wait and wait and wait, and then eventually at the very end, we square them up and put them in. And you heard me railing against like square up earlier. Like, okay, yeah. So if we want to practice basically how to get what a level handle height is at a lower point in space, while once we've got lateral connection, by changing the orientation of the blade and still letting the lower edge of the blade drag along the water, or skim along the water would be more appropriate, then we have the feedback of the water, and we also have the neuromuscular kind of awareness in space of where that lower point in the hands is. So that if we're doing half, usually not quarter, half or three-quarter feather, we have enough height that when we actually do put a full feather in, usually for a couple of strokes afterwards, the blades are miraculously somehow off the water, which is kind of cool. And then usually we kind of get lazy and I'll let the blades fall back down. So it gives us an opportunity into a window to actually see that this is possible. We can actually do this.
Well, that's it, with each stroke, though. If it's fine whenever the water's like this, but
yeah,
whenever it's rough, then with each stroke you have to accommodate with the different level of the water. So what is the principle that you would use to figure that out?
Well,
with each
right.
Stroke when the water's rough?
Good observation. There are a couple different things that are happening that are a little more peculiar or particular to the single rather than the big boats. Even in a double to some extent, the hull's a little wider. You can get away with this. Even in the flattest ideal, no wind, everything's perfect, my best rowing day, you're not going to be effectively, if you're rowing in a racing shell, you're not going to be getting consistently your blades as far off the water as you could in any other shell. You're going to be close to the water anyway. So if the water is flat, you can enjoy and stay relaxed because the blade's not kind of bouncing around. There's nothing disturbing your flow. If, however, the water picks up a little bit of a ripple or there's wake or whatever else, then your blade is kind of reacting to the water and bouncing around. So depending on what you're using for stability, if you're using the blade, this is a problem. Because now your stabilization device is bouncing around, which makes you very kind of not comfortable. However, if you have mastered intellectually and mechanically this concept of maintaining a lateral connection, then kind of like similar to, think about it like in terms of, say like the suspension on your automobile. So the wheel is bouncing all over the place as you go over, bumpy roads. But your car is probably, for the most part, staying relatively smooth, or smoother than what the amount of travel that's going on in the wheel. So if we maintain, assuming your suspension is up to date, if you bust out and everything, and then you start bouncing all over and you feel it. So if we're maintaining connection, then our primary point of contact is in that pin through the oar lock. And so as the oar bounces around, we can kind of, through our shoulder, kind of be the shock absorber and let that oar pivot without losing contact out here. So we still have a stable system, and we're able to incorporate basically the oars bouncing around a little bit. So, in ways of tracking how we are doing that, when we do something like semi-square blades, 3/4 feather, half feather, possibly even quarter feather with this. As we're going along and we're starting to get these blades off the water, we're offering what is in effect a sort of a sharper edge of the blade to kind of interact with the water. When the water's flat and we're feathered, the water and the surface tension, everything's sliding by really well. We don't really notice the serious negative effect of this because there's less resistance. But when we start squaring up, we can feel it because we're kind of hitting the water. So, if we start to master quarter, half feather, something like that, what we're going to find is that if our timing is right and everything's moving smoothly, the force of us skimming on the water will be less and less and less. This is a good sign. This means that we are actually paying attention to what's happening because we're now rowing in a system that provides more feedback when we don't have our timing spot on. And when we make those appropriate adjustments, lo and behold, the boat's moving's better, the blades are coming out cleaner, all good stuff. And this kind of segues into the last part that's really important, is we're moving towards learning how to really get our timing down, precision of timing. I think I was talking about this with you, or somebody else. Yeah, the timing of from side to side. So you've probably at some point, many of you, you've heard me say like back off on the pressure. Because you're just like pulling, and it's like the boat's not set, pull harder. It's like somewhere in the sequence we're getting off, so that we're not actually reaching the finish and then the release from the water at exactly the same point in time. And so the boat is not running as cleanly as it can because something's happening in the boat. The set's falling off a little bit. One blade is getting stuck with the water. In a single, we don't have the same option that we would have in a larger boat, which is much easier in a larger boat. You just have people roll square blades, and they figure it out really damn quickly. Gotta get the blades out, because if I don't, I'm gonna get stuck. And you have somebody else set the boat up, and it's no problem. In a single, it's just you, and the boat's very narrow. Square blades is, like 17 steps down the road. So we have to find something that's approximately the same thing, and putting a little less feather in usually accomplishes that. Because then you feel, if I don't get out, the blades get stuck, and I have to now figure out how to pry evenly and extract evenly to keep that boat set. And if I do, if I do that more, and usually keeping the boat set also involves holding onto the pins, not pulling the oars out or just losing pressure, then as I extract, the blades are quieter off the water, or even maybe initially with the velocity of the hull through the water pressing against the hull, I should have even potentially a little bit of time right off the release when both blades are out of the water and I have silence, which is nice. So that was a long, but did that cover it? So we have basically three main pieces here of this. So we have learning how to use the hands more effectively, basically keeping us honest. Saying, yeah, I hear what you're saying, it's like put it in practice, show me. We have the other piece of actually learning what that lower handle height is, because we're practicing it. We're all, like getting closer and closer to kind of how much clearance we'll need for square blades. To get the blade square, that's the height we're looking for. And then the other element here is, how do I actually learn how to get the sequence of that timing, the blade work, precise? So that if you look at some of those videos that I think Joe's already put up on the site at this point, you can see that the precision that's required for some of these, most of the videos I send are usually high quality, so you can say like, this is how it's supposed to look. Great timing. Impeccable timing. You're like, no, my timing's good. It's like, the only way to say your timing's good, square it up, show me. Can't do it, so your timing's not good. So you have to be able to kind of work those pieces through. And so for yourself, like once you get to a point where you are proficient enough with the blade work, you're proficient enough with the internal mechanics to say like, okay, now let's add the next step. And the nice thing about doing quarter feather or even half feathers, particularly for something on a nice day like today, for something like steady state, you can do that as a drill in a piece, because you just practice it in. Whereas something like wide grip, you can't. It's like, this is something that I do outside of training and go from there.
One other thing that I've been playing around with this season is actually using my legs
Good.
to kind of help
Stabilize.
out with the stability, right?
Very good observation. Yes, legs. It's that we have our kind of go back, however many years it's been now. First thing I was talking about here. So our contact points that are actually how we interact with the system. Feet, butt, pin. Basic physics. And the two primary ones are going to be the feet and the pin. Pin by way of the hands. So as we are shifting, coming up on the recovery, we have to be aware of how our butt, I think we talked about this, I think like 4 or maybe a month ago, how we shift on the seat, on those sit bones. Do we shift forward evenly? So something like doing the pick drill, where we go from arms only to arms and body. Am I actually shifting over here? Because getting in front of, and when I talked about doing the starts, getting in front of the sit bones is critical, because otherwise it's very hard to feel and have control over the interaction of the weight into my feet. Assuming I've shifted, then as I compress, as I'm getting closer to full compression, I should start to feel a pressure somewhere, hopefully right into or just below the ball of the foot, as I'm compressing and really getting ready to kind of uncoil those springs, right? And so if I've set everything else up, I have an opportunity to feel that. And if I'm kind of rowing and I'm trying to figure out why is the boat kind of regularly crashing down to one side or not set as I come into the catch. Okay, what's going on with the feet? Where's the force going? And I have to be aware of that. I have to be able to feel that. I don't like really hanging out at the catch. It's like, okay, let's practice this. What's happening? Where is the set starting to fall off? So I can kind of modulate as I'm coming up, possibly how I pull up. So hopefully I'm moving in a direction that's even. Assuming my butt is on the seat even, all this kind of stuff, then what's going on between my legs? If I have discrepancy in flexibility, there's going to be the potential that it's not going to track straight. So I want to have an awareness of this. And then on the drive, the second half of this, I have to make sure that as I'm pressing down, the legs are moving evenly. I'm pressing evenly with both sides. Most of us have a leg dominance, so there's going to be sort of muscular adaptations that cause us to kind of like, torque and twist and do lots of interesting things. Do the legs go down evenly? Do they turn? You've noticed this probably more on the erg because you're not locked in as much with your feet, but do you induce little rotations as you're kind of getting from A to B? Those are going to affect both sides. So, do my knees move the same way? Are my feet kind of turning around in the shoes a little bit? All these little bits of torque or different bits of energy which will throw the set of the boat off. Things to be aware of.
So really, we have to be visceral machines. Pistons that work. It's very difficult to balance being taut with you're concentrating with being relaxed.
So right. And this, if you had to focus on all these different points, yes, you would be, from a sensory standpoint, it'd be overwhelming. So this is why I'm saying if we keep it simple for ourselves by being aware of how we are constantly interacting out here as we move in space. There's the curvilinear motion. We're aware of this. And then we are also aware of the two main other contact points that are going to influence this sort of basic leverage of physics. Gotta have my feet. And then as I'm driving particularly, the resistance into the pin through my hands, and some of that's going to relate to how my weight is hanging off the seat or not. So there's all these other, we can break it down into little minutiae of stuff, but it's saying like, this in the long run, and if you're thinking about all this, you're getting in the way of flow. So you hopefully get yourself in the right ballpark, maintain awareness, soft awareness of this, and then just feel it. The best part is, in a single, you're really the only variable. So if you get it right, the boat will let you know. You're like, whoa, boat set. I don't know what happened, but I like it. I know that feeling. So then I just kind of keep futzing around in the dark trying to find that sense, which is why I hand out those videos. So if you're futzing around trying to find something, it's helpful to have, you you had some posters on your wall as a kid. That, I want that. And so when you get a glimpse of it, you're like, oh, yes, this is what I want, as opposed to, I don't know, I'm somewhere out there. So yeah, feet are good. And then how they continue to push all the way through. We haven't got to this. We would probably get this after sprints. Doing some feet out. Now that the weather's nice and warm. It helps you to really understand how effectively am I maintaining contact all the way to the release.
What about the angle of the foot stretchers?
The angle of the foot stretchers is going to have a couple different things. So first of all, it's depending on what your range of motion is. If we're changing the angle of the foot stretchers, this is going to allow you potentially to get more compression. And so for where somebody is in their body mechanics, we have an ideal potential. Like we said, look between Sebastian and Helga here, we have a slight height discrepancy between the two. So we're going to say that Sebastian has a potential for greater leverage because we're assuming he can take a longer stroke. However, if Sebastian didn't have knees that allowed a lot of range of motion, this may not be the case. So given his form, we're going to say where he's at for the rigging, what would be the most ideal setup to allow him to get the most out of the stroke. And if he can't compress or he has really tight hips and he can't get up and through, having a very vertical footboard would not work because it's going to adapt. It's going to require more flexibility through tissue that's just not compliant. So if we flatten out that footboard, that's going to make it easier for him to get in to compression. However, it then changes the vector of where we're actually pushing from. So there's a trade-off. Just like, you're saying like length versus rating. It's like, oh, I want to get longer and say, is this actually effective? If I get too long, I'm now mechanically not effective, theoretically. But if I can't get, say for some reason I can't get the rating above 20, it's like, okay, I may have to take longer strokes because I can only get to 20. So there's a trade-off actively, and so hopefully as we're refining this more, then we have a way of determining where you are at this point in time and acknowledging, even with where you set your foot stretches. Assuming you're moving or changing and actively monitoring it, your body is in a constant state of change. So theoretically, if we're paying attention, we're going to say, like, oh, I'm starting to hit my stern stops now. Hey, this is a good sign. Unless somebody changed the rigging in my boat, this is a good sign. I'm getting more compression, so I may have to bring my tracks a little bit to the stern to give me more room to get compression. It's like, yay, body changing, good job. Different little pieces.
I'm hitting my back stops for the first time.
Yay! Move your tracks.
So it's a good sign moving back.
No. If your stern stops or your bow stops? When you go to full slide or when at the finish? At the finish? So when your legs are straight, your wheels are hitting here?
No, the opposite.
Opposite, yes, then move the tracks. Not much, a couple centimeters, should be enough. Too much, and then you're, potentially where you're set up, may start digging in. So just enough to kind of give yourself clearance and make sure as you move them also that they're even. Having uneven tracks is, a recipe for doom unless you have a seat like Joe's and it's not coming off anyway. Any other questions? All right, so today I would like to see, we've got nice water. For those of you, show me, whatever is the most challenging drill that you're having trouble with, or something that show me. Swing by and just show me, and let's see if we can refine it a little more. The only way you get better at this is practicing. And if it's comfortable, especially early on when your mind and your body is fresh, you're missing the golden moments there. So see where things fall off the cart, and then that's where you stick around until you figure it out. That's the only way you're going to get better. So eventually, just normal sculling is like a piece of cake. It's like walking the park. It's a row in the lagoon.